it's Julia. So today I want to talk a little bit about how to get started with nature journaling on a practical level. So you won't need a lot of materials, and if you've made any kind of art before, then you probably already have all of the supplies that you need. So you can see a typical page from my nature journal here, and obviously I make a lot of art in my sketchbook. I take it with me into the field, into the forests when I hike, and I try to make these quick sketches. And sometimes when I have the time, then I fill in a little bit of color, and oftentimes I will add in the color later when I'm back home. So the first thing you need is to choose a sketchbook. And this can seem a bit difficult because there are so many different models available. I have just a few here from my own collection, and it could take a while to test them all. So I have a few thoughts for you about choosing a sketchbook for nature journaling. So if you want to take your sketchbook with you when you hike or when you just be outside in nature, then definitely choose one that's portable so you will want to take it with you. It's no use if you have this like big fancy sketchbook that looks really great, but that's so heavy that you don't want to carry it around. So since the point of sketching outside is to have your materials with you, this is really crucial. So you could take a really small sketchbook like this or a slightly bigger one. I like these sort of middle-sized sketchbooks, like it's A5, roughly about 5.5 by 8 inches. For myself, I don't like sketchbooks that are too small, so this is half the size than my A5 sketchbook. And because it can be really difficult to draw and make text notes in a sketchbook that's too small. So at this size, the sketchbook is small enough to carry around with me, and I still have a lot of place to draw when the sketchbook is open. So you can see this. Here I have a lot of notes here and some really spacious drawings. And also here. You can definitely experiment if a portrait mode or a landscape sketchbook will suit you better. You can always expand your drawing to both pages in kind of like this portrait format, but it's difficult to add height to a landscape sketchbook, so keep that in mind. One very, very important aspect is to choose a sketchbook with acid-free paper. So you might remember these old paperback books from the library or from thrift stores. These are these yellow brittle pages, and these are usually made with cheap paper that contains acid, and this will make the pages crumble under your fingers after some years or sometimes even months. And obviously you don't want this for your artwork. If you want to look back at your sketches after a while, then definitely invest in acid-free paper. It's totally worth it. So there are these spiral-bound notebooks out there, and I have to say I don't really like them because spirals always get in my way when I open these books. I know some people like the fact that you can flip your page around and hold it more steadily, like if you were to do something like this, and then you can just hold it and you have a sturdy back and you can sketch like this. But I don't really like the spiral in the middle, so it's not the perfect sketchbook for me. Definitely try this out for yourself and see if you like it. I already said that a hardcover sketchbook has an advantage of coming with this sort of inbuilt support board for drawing, so this can be crucial if you are outside and don't have another kind of support. Softcover sketchbooks can feel a little bit wobbly. And then it's really essential that you use a sketchbook which is made for the kind of materials that you use them with. So if you use watercolors, make sure that the paper in your sketchbook can take watercolors. So some sketchbook come with very thin paper that will only work well for dry media, and this is fine if you use colored pencils or pens, but if you want to include watercolor and add a little bit of water, then make sure that the paper in your sketchbook can take it. One thing I like to do is to make my own sketchbook, and this is not that difficult if you have a little bit of time, and it also means you can choose your own paper, which I think is great. And I sometimes make sketchbooks of watercolor pads that I bought and then found out I don't really like to use. So at least when I have this paper in my sketchbook, then it'll get used up and I can leave that paper behind me, sort of. So this is everything about sketchbooks. Let's take a look at the rest of the tools. So we have here basically the rest of my field kit. This is all that I take with me when I go sketching outside. So let me show you what's in this little pouch. This is a magnifying glass, which you don't really need. It's just something that I like to bring with me. Let's empty this out. So these are basically the tools. This is my little watercolor palette. It has really all the colors that I need. I have made another video and I also have blog posts where I speak in detail about this watercolor palette, so feel free to check this out. I really like these small metal palettes. They are really sturdy, they can't break, and yeah, they're really versatile. So it's definitely a good option. Then as for the rest of these, I usually carry 1 or 2 pencils. I used to have an eraser. I don't know what happened to it, so I need to get an eraser back into my little pouch here. Then I also have, for my watercolors, I also have a few different brushes. So for making art in the field, these water tank brushes are really a great solution because the water, you have the water already in them with this little tank in the back here. You can't do really dry brushing techniques with these, but I think it's fine. There are also other kinds of travel brushes. Here's a solution I made myself from an old Winsor & Newton travel brush because I didn't like the short handle, so that's also a possibility to just use travel brushes of any kind of quality that you like. I also have this waterproof pen with ink so that I can add a few shadows here and there if I want. And another thing that I always have with me when I'm out is my fountain pen with waterproof fountain pen ink, which is really great if you want to use watercolors in your sketchbook over your ink lines. So this is another really great thing to think about. This is something out of my trick bag, so to say. This is a white crayon, and I use this to make sort of white lines before I add watercolors. So this will actually repel the paint, and so these areas will stay white. And I will show this another time. This is a really great technique for clouds or for highlights if you add these before you add the paint. Yeah, so you see it's really not that much that I carry with me. It all fits nicely into this small bag here, into this small pouch. I can even put my watercolors in here if I want. Sometimes what I bring with me are colored pencils if I know that I won't be able to do much with watercolor out there. And you can see that this is also just a selection of colors with these very short pencils because this is just a way to save weight. So my recommendation would be to keep everything light if you want to sketch outside, because you will have to carry these tools, and it makes more sense to bring a few proven tools and a few pens that you can use in different ways than to carry a big variety of pens that you can't keep apart or that you can't even find in your bag. And that's basically it. This is what I have in my sketching kit. just remember that there's no perfect field kit or something like that. Everyone is a bit different and everyone likes to work with different tools. I know there are people who only take a notebook and a pencil with them, and that's also fine. So you might find that you want to change your materials from time to time, and that's also perfectly all right. So it's important to remember that as a human being, in order to be relaxed and make art and make interesting observations, you have to feel comfortable and relaxed. So you don't want to start sketching and feel a little bit like you don't want to sit down. So you have to sort of take care of yourself. And this means things like protecting yourself against heat or cold. Depending on the weather, bring either sun protection or wear warming clothes. Consider bringing something to eat and to drink. Also have a map and maybe a small field guide so you can identify species or plants in the field. So one thing that I like to bring with me when I'm hiking outside or when I know I want to be nature journaling is this little sort of insulating mat that I can sit on. And this is just one of these little practical things that make it a bit easier to find a comfortable place to sit and to keep your butt warm. And yeah, just to make your life a little bit easier. So I mentioned earlier that I like to work with these water brushes when I'm in the field. They really come in handy because of this water tank. You can definitely take your water container with you in the field and work with that if you find a comfortable place to put it and if you have these travel brushes. One thing I would advise against is simply pouring out the water where you sit when you're finished, because even though watercolors aren't toxic per se, they still can contain heavy metals. So you don't want to introduce these traces of heavy metals into the spot where you have been sitting, into nature. So that's one thing that I think is important to consider. So apart from that, I think that's everything you need for your nature journaling practice outside. Let me know what tips you have for being outside and for drawing outside below in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what topics you're interested in. I'd love to hear from you what questions you have about nature journaling. I also have a blog on nature journaling where I talk about a lot of these things and show in detail how I work with watercolor. So feel free to check out my blog. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Bye.